My name is Lena Carter, and I'm 18 years old. My story begins on the day I turned 18. What should have been a celebration turned into the most brutal moment of my life. That morning, my adoptive parents, Douglas and Marlene Whitaker, sat me down and, with no emotion, told me I wasn't their biological daughter. I had been adopted. Then they handed me a worn-out duffel bag with a few of my things and told me I needed to leave their house immediately. I didn't argue. I didn't even cry. I just stood up, took the bag, and walked out. They thought they were shocking me with the news, but I already knew. A few weeks earlier, I had found a hidden letter tucked inside one of Marlene's old books in the attic. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words burned into my memory. It said my real mother was a woman named Dr. Natalia Kuznetsova, a psychiatrist who had been institutionalized years ago. She wasn't crazy. She had been silenced after accusing Dr. Martin Caldwell, a powerful and respected physician, of conducting illegal experiments on women. The more I read, the more everything began to make sense. Natalia had tried to expose Caldwell's experiments, forced treatments, memory suppression, and abuse, but instead of being believed, she was declared unstable and locked away. What chilled me the most was a detail at the end of the letter. My adoptive father, Douglas Whitaker, had direct ties to the Caldwell Research Alliance. That's when it hit me. I wasn't adopted out of love. I had been taken. My entire life was part of a cover-up. I couldn't let it go. I had to find her, my real mother, and uncover the truth. After days of digging through old news articles, hospital records, and legal documents, I traced her to a long-term psychiatric facility called Crestfield Recovery Institute, tucked away on the outskirts of Camden, Illinois. I used what little savings I had to take a bus there. When I arrived, the place looked more like a prison than a hospital: tall fences, security cameras, and a constant, suffocating silence. But I didn't back down. I had come too far. I posed as a student doing research on mental health facilities to get inside. Most of the staff ignored me, but one nurse, Jamie Porter, noticed something in my eyes, something familiar. After a few quiet conversations, she agreed to help me. Jamie confirmed that Dr. Natalia Kuznetsova was there, heavily medicated and kept in isolation. She said Natalia rarely spoke, and when she did, it was dismissed as delusional rambling. But Jamie believed there was truth buried in those words. Jamie took a risk and snuck me into the restricted wing late at night. I saw her, my mother, sitting in a small, dim room, staring at the wall. Her hair was streaked with gray, her hands trembling slightly, but when she looked at me, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. She whispered my name, Alina, before I could even speak. That moment shattered me. Despite everything they'd done to her, she remembered. She knew me. In the days that followed, Jamie helped me sneak in again and again. Natalia began to speak more clearly, her memories slowly returning. She told me everything: how she discovered Caldwell was using his clinic to perform unauthorized neurological experiments on vulnerable women under the guise of therapy. When she threatened to go public, she was drugged, labeled unstable, and committed. No one listened. No one cared. And Douglas Whitaker, my adoptive father, had been one of Caldwell's key supporters, helping to cover it all up. I couldn't keep this to myself. I needed help, someone who could make the world listen. That's when I found Madison Clark, a former investigative journalist whose career had been destroyed after she published a story about the Caldwell Alliance. Most called her a conspiracy theorist now, but I knew better. I contacted her, showed her the letter, the facility records, and what I'd learned from Natalia. She agreed to meet me, and within minutes of hearing the story, she was in. Madison was sharp, driven, and had the resources to dig deeper. Together, we spent days going through every scrap of evidence, from medical files to leaked documents from the Caldwell Foundation. We found video footage, raw, damning videos of patients being subjected to forced treatments, their memories erased, their identities stripped away. It was more than just unethical, it was criminal. We knew it would destroy them. Madison arranged for the footage and documents to be leaked anonymously to major media outlets. The story spread like wildfire. Public outrage grew, and authorities had no choice but to investigate. The names of those involved, including Caldwell and Douglas, were all over the news. The scandal erupted. Caldwell, Whitaker, and their entire network were exposed. Investigations opened across multiple states, and the public demanded justice. The media, now fully behind the story, painted Caldwell as a monster, a manipulator of vulnerable women for personal gain. But the more I learned, the more I realized how deep the corruption ran. They didn't just silence my mother, they silenced so many others. Months later, I managed to get Natalia out of Crestfield, legally and with a great deal of resistance. It wasn't easy, but with Madison's help, we found a lawyer willing to fight for her release. As we walked out of the facility, my mother looked at me with tear-filled eyes, her grip on my hand firm and real for the first time in years. After Natalia's release, we started over. We found a quiet place outside of Camden, far from the shadows of Crestfield and the Caldwell scandal. I helped my mother piece together the fragments of her life. She began therapy, slowly reclaiming the memories they tried to erase. I stayed by her side, making sure she felt safe, loved, and not forgotten. Then, a few months later, the unexpected happened. Dana Bell, a journalist who had disappeared years ago while investigating the Caldwell conspiracy, contacted me. She had been in hiding, waiting for the right moment to come forward with her findings. Now she was ready. She had evidence of her own, proof that the network was even bigger and more insidious than we had imagined. With Dana's help, we formed an unbreakable alliance. The three of us, my mother, Dana, and I, worked together, pooling our knowledge, our evidence, and our determination. We took everything we had and pushed harder than ever. Dana's connections in the media and legal circles brought even more attention to the case. With each new leak, more victims came forward, telling their stories, confirming everything we had exposed. Caldwell's foundation crumbled. Investigations spread internationally, and soon, not just Caldwell, but dozens of those involved were arrested, charged, and brought to trial. My adoptive father, Douglas Whitaker, was implicated, too. It wasn't just about what he did to me, it was about the countless lives he'd destroyed for his own gain. As the trials began, I watched from the sidelines, a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief settling in. The courtroom was filled with victims, including my mother, each of us telling our stories, each of us demanding justice for the horrors we had endured. The evidence was undeniable, the testimonies were powerful, and the world was finally waking up to the truth. Douglas Whitaker stood trial as one of the key players in the conspiracy. His cold demeanor never changed, even as the weight of his actions caught up with him. I had imagined confronting him in court, but when the moment came, I couldn't bring myself to look at him. The man who had raised me, the man I once trusted, was nothing more than a criminal, someone who had destroyed lives for power and profit. The verdicts came in. Caldwell was sentenced to life in prison, and Douglas received a lengthy sentence for his involvement. But for me, the justice wasn't in their convictions, it was in finally reclaiming my life and my mother. Months passed, and as I walked away from the courthouse that day, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The chapters of my past, filled with lies, manipulation, and betrayal, were finally closed. My mother and I had our lives back. We could breathe freely without the constant fear of being watched or controlled. We decided to stay in Camden, rebuilding our lives at our own pace. I enrolled in college, studying psychology to understand the very systems that had been used to manipulate us. Natalia, still recovering but much stronger, began working part-time at a local clinic, helping others who had been through trauma. But there was one final thing we had to do. We had to honor the memory of all those women who had suffered under Caldwell's hands, who had been silenced just like my mother. With Dana's help, we founded a foundation dedicated to providing support, therapy, and legal aid to victims of unethical medical practices. It was our way of making sure no one else would suffer the way we did.